The Dodgers are in a full-blown funk after losing their season series to Milwaukee. Right now, this team looks nothing like a championship contender.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Harry Ruiz. That's Travis Rodgers, and it's time for Locked On Dodgers. On today's show, Justin Wrobleski is on the IL, and we might have seen his final appearance as a starter in 2026. Kyle Tucker's struggles at Dodger Stadium have become impossible to ignore. But first, the Dodgers are stuck in a funk. This Dodgers team just doesn't look like itself right now. This is not about one bad player. It's not about one bad inning, and it's not about one bad series. Travis, the Dodgers are in a stretch where too many things are going wrong at the same time.
Yeah, it's funny. It goes back to right before the All-Star break, and you and I were having this discussion. Our everydayers may remember this. They played a really sloppy game against Arizona. I think it might have been the first or second game of that series right before the All-Star break, and they just played bad. And I think I remember saying something along the lines of how surprising it was because it had been such a long time since you've just watched them play a sloppy game, since just a bad game. Not since they'd lost necessarily, but since they looked bad doing it. And really since that happened, they've just continued to do it. There's been a couple of good ones in there along the way, and it's not like they've totally fallen off a cliff, but that clean baseball that Dave Roberts talks about all the time is nowhere to be found. And yesterday was a really good example of it, just kind of sloppy around the edges. The at-bats, I think, are the best representation of how they have not just looked like a particularly good baseball team, whether that's the challenging, whether that's swinging at bad pitches, whether that's just not grinding out, at-bats against pitchers to get into that bullpen. It's just all of the little things that they have been so good at for never mind most of this season, but for most of this incredible run that they've been on, have been absent for about the last, 5-6 weeks or so. They just don't look sharp. Now, the good news is you can fix it. There's plenty of time to get it squared away, but it's not as easy as just saying, oh, we'll stop doing it. You have to actually stop doing it. And so far, they haven't been able to stop.
No doubt about it. And when you look at Sunday's game, which was the third out of 4 games that the Dodgers lost against Milwaukee this weekend at Chavez Ravine, they scored only 10 runs across the entire series. And then on Sunday, it was frustrating because once again, you had Tarik Skubal on the mound for the third time, and he wasn't spectacular. He wasn't the best because he had 7 hits, 2 walks, but at the same time, Travis, only 2 earned runs. 2 runs, one of them earned over 6 innings. That's a quality start, but with the way that your bats have been hitting, it was impossible to win that game that you end up losing by a final score of 6-2. This Dodgers team just looks disconnected, just doesn't look like itself, and I don't know if it's just a thing where, okay, let's get it out of our system before the end of the month of August, before we get into September, before we get into October, or if this is the version of the Dodgers that we're going to get the rest of the way that we hadn't seen throughout the season. Previous years, Travis, we had gotten a little bit of a bad streak here and there, but right now it just feels like a never-ending loop since pretty much the All-Star break that this team hasn't been able to connect. You had those first 3 series on the road at the Bronx, in Philadelphia, in Queens, where they look good. But ever since, it just hasn't feel like this team is the team that it is with guys like Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. You can get Freddie probably out of that group, but Shohei hasn't been the Shohei we've seen for the first 2 years in his Dodger contract. Mookie Betts, definitely on the second half of his contract, downside of his career. Kyle Tucker, definitely a contract signing that we are regretting already, and we're going to be talking about him deeply in segment 2. But besides Freddie, Max Muncy, Andy Pages, I feel like this team is definitely thumbs down at this moment.
Yeah, and I think you can put the rest of those guys in there too at various points. Maybe they're a little less, guilty at the moment than some of the others, but they've had their moments as well. And I think it's a combination of a lot of things. It's not any one thing. It's not just the fact that they're going through a lull. Is it? Yeah, but it's not just that. It's not just that they're playing games that, quite frankly, as disappointing as it is to say, don't really matter, that their level of attention to detail is probably waning just because the stakes are low, right? That they're going to go to the postseason. They're going to play in October, and everybody in that organization, that team knows it. You don't want to slide into bad habits, but it's very hard not to. So I think that's part of it. You're starting to see a team show a little bit of that, just kind of that dog day of August sort of situation, because it's not just the 2026 season that's starting to wrap up. It's 10 years of playing deep into the year that's starting to wrap up. And all of these guys, like you just mentioned, whether it's Ohtani or Freeman or Muncy or Pages or, go right Betts, right on down the line. Most of these guys have played a ton of baseball. And I'm sure that there are many times where it's just like, man, I just need to get off this merry-go-round along the way. Some of these guys are older players. So you're starting to see just the bleed of the course of a season. So you put all of those things together and you get what you get, which we've seen over the last couple of months, which is just not very good at all. Now, Dave Roberts is the right guy to figure it out. These players are not inherently lazy players. They're inherently really good players that I think will fall back to what they need to do when they need to do it. But it's starting to get to that point in the year where, hey, let's start to, there's plenty of time. We'll figure this out. Yeah, fine. Let's actually start doing it, because if it's just one of those things, it's not that big of a deal. But when it's all three or four of those things mixed together, it's a little harder to just flip that switch and say, okay, today's the day we're going to start playing a lot better. You need to start to do it. And I think the thing that you're going to see more than anything else, the most representative example of that switch being thrown is the way that they take their at-bats. They're more team-oriented at-bats, less selfish at-bats, and I think that's the first thing that needs to change.
Yeah, and when you talk about at-bats and quality, we haven't been seeing it from this Dodgers team that has only scored 54 runs over the last 16 games since July 31st. That's less than 3.5 runs per game. They've scored 3 runs or fewer in half of those games. And Travis, over this weekend against the Milwaukee Brewers, the Dodgers scored 10 runs. Out of those 10 runs, 7 came via the home run. When you're in the postseason, you're playing the best of the best when it comes to pitchers. And we had a little preview over the weekend, having Jacob Misiorowski on the mound on Saturday at Dodger Stadium. And then Logan Henderson, he outpitched and outdueled Tarik Skubal up on the mound as well. And these two guys, there's a high possibility that you're going to face them multiple times in just a couple of months here once October rolls around, either in the DS or the CS. And right here, like you said, you got to think more of a team approach. You got to think about, instead of just swinging at first pitches, thinking about maybe I'm a little patient here. Let the first pitch come through. Let the second pitch come through, because you're seeing guys reach the 6th, 7th inning with manageable pitch counts instead of thinking, let's get the bullpen, which, by the way, the Milwaukee Brewers bullpen is great. So it's not like you're getting a big dip in difference in quality going from the starting pitchers to the bullpen. But at the same time, I'd rather face any other pitcher besides Jacob Misiorowski or even Henderson after seeing him on Sunday than those two guys up on the mound. And this team needs to change that approach. The fastballs, they've been terrible against fastballs as of late as well, the Dodgers. It's just the offense right now, it's not clicking. And then when you add the bullpen, I mean, you had Edwin Diaz blowing another save, some way miraculously on Friday, being able to get out of that jam that he got himself into. That's a big issue right now. It's like every part of this team right now is struggling. Starting pitching might be the only thing that is a little bit more consistent, but even like Justin Wrobleski, again, surrendering another home run, and we'll talk about him later in the show, going on the IL. It's just like pulling teeth watching this Dodgers team right now in the middle of August.
Yeah, they're playing lousy, and they know it, and everybody else knows it. And this is an opportunity for the rest of the league to kind of make a little money off of them, put some games in the bank, whatever, because it's not going to last forever. So that's the good news, that they will come out. But they're playing bad baseball, and all of the reasons that you just talked about right there. I think when you kind of look at some of the home runs are going to come, right? They have so many players on the team. They're going to hit home runs if it's almost on accident. But what they haven't been able to do is generate a bunch of runs and put up crooked numbers in single innings. When they get big opportunities, they haven't seemed to be able to kind of take advantage of it along the way. I agree with you. Their starting pitching has been really, really good. Skubal in his 3 starts with the Dodgers, None of them have been like prime Skubal, but all of them have been pretty good along the way. So if this is kind of the floor of what you're seeing, I think you can rest pretty comfortably knowing that he's going to be able to deliver those other moments. But the rest of it, I'm with you. And it's the other, like defensively, they've been bad. Running the bases, they've been bad. The challenging things, they've been bad. Like just the stuff that is easy to control, the stuff that's easy to make better decisions on, they really haven't. If you run into Mizorowski and he just is a buzz throw through, okay, fine. That, that big deal. There's not much you can do against a guy that's throwing 105 miles an hour. But throwing to the right base, trying to take an extra base at the right time as opposed to the wrong time, clean infield play, good, long, hard at-bats. Yeah, that's stuff that you have complete control over, and they're just not doing it.
Right before the All-Star break in this same show, we were praising the Dodgers defense and the way that they played clean baseball. Since July 7th, they've committed 25 errors, Travis. That's a lot. And that's, I mean, here and there you get mistakes that don't count as errors, but 25 blatant errors for the Dodgers, that adds another layer to, okay, you have pitching that sometimes is great, sometimes it isn't out of the bullpen. You add an error in there, that changes the complexion, the formula completely for this team. But look, the bats, they've been struggling. And where are they going this week? Where are they heading over to start a new series? In Colorado. And Coors Field can cure a lot of offensive problems very quickly. This team needs one of those series where they just uncork and score 10 plus runs in each game to start feeling a little bit better for themselves.
Look, if they score a bunch of runs in Coors Field, great. Nobody's going to complain about that. But I think more importantly than clobbering a lousy team in a weird ballpark where the ball flies 900 miles is, does the ball get thrown to the right base? Do they make any dumb outs on the bases? Do you see them have good at-bats? Does the relief pitching start to tighten up a little bit? Like just that level of quality play needs to elevate as opposed to scoring some run. If you do all of the little things better, the runs will come. The runs in Colorado may come anyway, just because the nature of the ballpark and the nature of the opponent. But the second you leave there, those same old bad habits are going to bubble up again. So I think for me at least, Harry, it's not so much do they score 8 or 9 runs. If they do, great. I mean, I'll certainly take it. But how do they look defensively? How does their bullpen look? What are those at-bats with first and second and nobody out? What does that at-bat look like? Like those are the things to me that I think are going to tell you they're going to be a much more reliable indicator of whether or not they're actually turning the corner than if they go kick the tires off of a bad team.
Something to keep an eye on. The Dodgers, by losing this season series against the Milwaukee Brewers 4-3, the Brewers now have the tiebreaker over LA. At the moment, they have a 3-game lead when it comes to the National League standings, but with the tiebreaker in their favor, it's pretty much like a 4-game lead over the Dodgers, and that's going to be a big situation to keep an eye on, both for the overall best record in the National League, but also it could end up being a situation where Atlanta overtakes Milwaukee, and then Milwaukee ends up being number 2. And when you try to catch up to them to avoid going into the wild card, they have that tiebreaker on you. So the Dodgers, they're not able to take advantage of playing at home against Milwaukee. They lose 3 out of 4, but last season they couldn't beat Milwaukee once in the regular season, and then Milwaukee couldn't beat them once in the postseason. So there's still a month and a half left in the regular season. The Dodgers definitely need to start playing better baseball with that time that's remaining before the playoffs start. So my question to you to end segment number 1, checking out our show, what is the biggest problem with the Dodgers right now? Drop your take in the comments, hit us up on social, or hit up the Locked On Dodgers listener line, 2793-LOCK. That's 279-356-2533. We want to hear where you stand. Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, after another brutal homestand for Kyle Tucker, the question is getting louder. What the hell is going on with him when he's playing in LA?
Today's episode of Locked On Dodgers is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a home run today, FanDuel's giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. You just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. And best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team, our favorite team, or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get a chance to make your prediction before first pitch, right? Sometimes there's a guy that's on a hot streak. Sometimes there's a guy that's on a cold streak. So stay away from the cold, like, I don't know, Kyle Tucker. Maybe there's a pitching matchup that you really like. And as we talk about here all the time, Shohei is always a great choice. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a home run. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball.
Are you new here? Welcome. Everydayers, you already know you're the heartbeat of our show. It's easy and free to help us out. Subscribe and like our content on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and hit up the Locked On Dodgers listener line at 279-3-LOCKED. Kyle Tucker can't hit at Dodger Stadium. He's definitely having a strange season, and that's an understatement. And I mean really strange, Travis, because if you only looked at what Tucker has done on the road, you'd probably say, yeah, that's Kyle Tucker. But then he comes home and everything changes. His OPS on the road, 840, pretty much career level. At Dodger Stadium, 566. That's not a small difference. That's a completely different hitter.
All right, this is going to sound weird. Stick with me here for a second, all right? So this actually, in a very, very weird roundabout way, makes me feel slightly better about Kyle Tucker. Follow me on this. He obviously cares. You know what I mean? Like, he's obviously putting pressure on himself at Dodger Stadium to perform in front of Dodger fans because he knows that incredibly lucrative contract that he signed, he's not living up to it. That pressure of, hey, all of my people, the Dodger fans, are here watching at me, is landing in a way that is not happening on the road. That when he's on the road, to your point, that looks about like what you would expect from Kyle Tucker. Now, we could argue this now because my whole point is Kyle Tucker is a good player. Kyle Tucker was never a great player, but they're paying him like he's, an exceptionally great player. So kind of trying to find that middle ground of, okay, he didn't force anybody to pay him that money. So don't hold that against him. But it's like, this is why that number was like, really? That's the guys? If he had been just kind of paid like a good player, he'd be like, yeah, all right, it's kind of a weird year. But he's been paid to such an extraordinary level that you expect extraordinary performances. He's not an extraordinary player. Even when he's at his very best, he's pretty good, but he's not Ohtani or Freeman or Betts or even Muncy when he's really going as well as he possibly can. So now all of a sudden, add in the fact that clearly Dodger Stadium is a place that's gotten into his head. The pressure that he's carrying on himself is real. Now, he may not, you may not be able to see it in his body language or verbally or anything like that. But the fact that he's struggling at Dodger Stadium, at least Harry gives me a teeny tiny little bit of that he cares about it, because I wasn't quite sure that he did, but apparently Dodger Stadium is a place that he's uncomfortable. He needs to get over it, and he needs to get over it quickly and figure it out. I hope that there's a couple of hard hit balls somewhere in his future, and it's like just that relaxation that comes along with it. But that may be a little overly optimistic because we're in the middle of August, and if it hasn't happened, it just might not at all.
Travis, you're supposed to feel more comfortable playing at home with your home fans in the stands, and after that.
This isn't his home. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. Like, all of these guys, like Teoscar Hernandez, when he first came over, had been on a handful of different teams, whatever, but he's had a couple of big moments. Everybody's like, all right, that's our guy. Tommy Edman comes over from the Cardinals, hits some big home runs in the post. All right, that's our guy. We love him. This dude is still a stranger because he hasn't had a moment. I know he's got the right colors on. I know he's got the right hat on. And I know that the people in the stands want Dodge, but he hasn't earned the right to have Dodger people feel good about him, and he knows it, and the fans know it. It's like we're just meeting someone. We don't know each other yet. So when he goes out on the road, there's a little bit less of that pressure, and here it's like you're still trying to impress your new fans, and it just hasn't happened for him.
But Travis, how is it that even a guy like Ben Wartford last year had better moments than Kyle Tucker at Dodger Stadium? How is it that guys like Alex Call has had better moments than this guy at Dodger Stadium? It's like you have half of your games at this ballpark compared to, for example, I went and watched the Dodgers in Houston back in July. I got to watch Kyle Tucker hit a home run. My buddies Rick and Bo from El Paso, who are everydayers who check out our show, they went to Arizona and they saw Kyle Tucker hit a home run at Chase Field. We've had the same amount between us in 2 games on the road. We've seen Kyle Tucker hit the same amount of home runs as if you were a season ticket holder and went to all 60 games that Kyle Tucker has hit at Dodger Stadium. That's nearly impossible for it to happen. And it's just something where literally you're at the ballpark where your team plays their home games just with the numbers playing more games there. You're supposed to have a little bit more of maybe not average, because right now, what is he hitting? 189 at Dodger Stadium, 275 on the road. That doesn't make sense. But home runs, you got to at least bump into 3 home runs at home or something. But this guy simply, it's like it's a little bit in his head. And he even got benched on Saturday. Yeah, no, I know. That was an understatement. But Dave Roberts, he benched him on Saturday because they were playing at Travis Ravine. You're not supposed to have to take that type of decision when you're paying a player $60 million a year. He's not the best player in baseball, but he's an all-star. He's a pretty good ball player compared to potential. But right now, you could probably call up Josue de Paula and have the same kind of production out of him compared to Kyle Tucker.
Well, there's a lot there. He should be better at home. Yeah, he is. He's uncomfortable here. Why is almost irrelevant, but he is. And they got to find a way to get through it. They got to find a way to get over it. And just saying that this should be that way and that, okay, but it's not. So how are we going to fix it? He's clearly very, very deeply uncomfortable at Dodger Stadium. The thing that I'm sure Dave Roberts is leaning on, Andrew Friedman is leaning on, and I'm sure Kyle Tucker is probably telling himself this every single day. I don't know if he's believing it, but he's probably telling himself, I've had success in this league. I've been an all-star in this league. I'm a good baseball player. It's going to show up eventually. But I really do believe this. Baseball, more than any other sport, is about confidence. And you're talking about Rortvedt and Call and these other guys. They had success. They had success in those moments. They don't have the burden of, oh, you make $119 million or you cost the team $119 million a season. All right, show me. Go ahead. Alex Call has a bad game. Nobody remembers. Ben Rortvedt has a bad game. It's like, when's Will Smith coming back? He's, Rortvedt's doing the best he can. So anything you get is gravy. Kyle Tucker could have 2 hits a night and be like, yeah, well, for $119 million a season, you should. Like, he's the bar is totally different. His confidence is clearly shattered. I think what's interesting is the benching that you mentioned, because you kind of have to. At some point, it's like you can't just keep doing it because you have to do it. At some point, you have to put the 9 guys out there that give you the best chance of winning. And I don't know if he's one of those 9 guys every single night. And that's going to be a really hard decision for this team and for Dave and for Andrew Friedman and people that put that lineup together, because he's been dreadful at Dodger Stadium. And at some point, you just got to put your best guys out there.
And to make matters worse, after going 0 for 19 at the batter's box, you had him in the 9th inning miss a clear catch out at right field and ends up scoring 2 more runs for Milwaukee, making it from what was a 3-run game where you're like, okay, maybe we can get 3 runs across the plate in the bottom of the 9th, even though they haven't scored much throughout the series. 3 runs, you're like, okay, maybe. Once you add 2 more runs and it's a 6-1 game, you're like, all right, this one's out of hand. We're gonna lose this. It's out of case. And the fans, they started booing really loudly when it came to Kyle Tucker, because they know the contract situation. They know the type of player that he's supposed to be. And when he's not producing at the batter's box or out in the outfield, I'm actually asking, should they only play him on the road and play Kike Hernandez at home?
Look, if this is still going on a month from now, I think the answer to that will probably be, yeah, they're not going to just run him out there to run him out there. They will find something else to do. But the only way to fix this is to hit. The only way to fix this is to play better, because, quite frankly, like the booing, I'm surprised it took this long. The good news is that the team's been pretty good for this season, but it's impossible to hide. And that the defensive miscues, that's just a result of not being able to hit, right? That's just a matter of he's struggling so much on one end of the game that it's bleeding into other parts. Some players are able to compartmentalize that a little bit, others less so. And like he's had a dreadful season. Now, couple of good, important hits in the playoffs, kind of erase all of this stuff, but that's getting harder and harder to believe, seeing what we've seen for the last 4+ months.
The Dodgers need to figure it out, man. And because this team cannot afford to have a major part of this lineup just disappear every time it plays at home. And I mean, you ended up from having him as a cleanup guy to the number 2 in the lineup to now dropping him to 6 and 7. Mental, physical. It's a lot that is going on right there with Kyle Tucker. So I want to ask you, watching or listening to our show, do you think Kyle Tucker's home struggles are something the Dodgers should be seriously worried about? Or do you expect him to turn this around? Drop your answer in the comments or find us on social. I'm at Harry Ruiz on X, at Harry_Ruiz on Instagram, and on TikTok at Harry Ruiz_. You can find Travis on X and IG at Travis Rodgers. Next on Locked On Dodgers, Justin Wrobleski was just added to the injured list. Could we have already seen Wrobo's final start of 2026?
Big thank you to our friends at Amazon for this limited break. This back-to-school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy back-to-school shopping experiences can actually be. Starts with a few items on the list, and suddenly you're shopping for, well, everything. Supplies, clothes, lunch gear, tech, and about 10 other things that you didn't see, and it adds up quickly. How about that first perfect day of school outfit? Because they want to make that great impression. You end up putting almost as much into thought into how it's going to look as they do. And well, at least you get those first day pictures. How about the school? Says you need a calculator, headphones, tablet. It's all right, not so bad. But now you got to buy another one before the semester's halfway over. Since when did so much tech go into elementary school? So remember, with Amazon's low back-to-school prices, just spend less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids.
Don't forget to check out Pete Fox on our YouTube channel with the Locked On Dodgers postcast with immediate reaction right after the final out of every Dodgers game. Is this the end of Wrobo's starts in 2026? Justin Wrobleski was added to the injured list, and the timing is definitely interesting. The Dodgers placed him there with left forearm inflammation ahead of Sunday's game against Milwaukee. And Travis, the team says the hope is that this is a short-term situation, and obviously that's what everyone prefers, right? But there's another question here. Could this injury combined with the Dodgers rotation situation, including the return of Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell, mean that Wrobleski doesn't make another start for Los Angeles this season?
Sure, absolutely it could. I mean, there's too much traffic on the road, right? If you take everybody that can start a game for you at this point, I think it's 8 guys, and they're just not going to do an 8-man rotation. You're not going to do a 7. 6 is pushing it a little bit. So this was inevitable. I think it's a drag that if he in fact is, got a little something going on in his arm, that's unfortunate, because he's been so good for the Dodgers this year. But you're talking about somebody that is way past their career high in innings pitched. You're talking about somebody that has carried a great deal of load and burden for this team throughout most of this season. And if he needs to chill out for a little bit, he's certainly earned the right. I think that you're going to need him in the postseason. I think that whether that's as a bridge guy, whether that's as a situational lefty or whatever it may be, he's somebody that, kind of going back to what we talked about with Kyle Tucker a little bit, I think Justin Wrobleski's in the opposite bucket, where he does have confidence. He does feel good. Like, I pitched my way onto the All-Star team. I know he hasn't pitched particularly well of late, but there's some recent success in there that he can feel good about. So I think his opportunities to start are probably very, very, very limited moving forward, at least for this season. But his opportunities to pitch probably are not. And that's going to be a wild competition for these guys in the bullpen as we get closer and closer to it, because somebody in one of these elite arms that they have in that starting rotation, one of them is probably going to have to go to the bullpen, and Wrobo's probably at the top of the list.
Yeah, and right now, for example, lined up for the series against the Rockies, you have Blake Snell, Eric Lauer, Roki Sasaki. You know that Yoshinobu Yamamoto is also part of that. He's at the top of that rotation for the Dodgers. Tyler Glasnow is coming back. Shohei Ohtani, he pitched the bullpen over the weekend as well, where he used all his stuff. So his return is more closer than it was further just a couple of weeks back. And also a part of this equation, Travis, is looking at the off days. After coming off of 13 games in 13 days, once they hit August 20th, the Dodgers will have an off day on October 20th, which is this Thursday. And then on Monday, the 24th, that's another off day. So that alleviates a little bit more of the pressure when it comes to the players in the starting rotation. And then the Dodgers also have an off day on August 31st. So you're talking about 3 off days in a 12-day span. That also helps, where having Justin Wrobleski on the 15-day IL doesn't hurt as much these upcoming 2 weeks compared as if it had happened 2 weeks ago when you needed as much starting pitching as you could get. Right now, it's the perfect moment, especially after him allowing as many home runs as he did over since the All-Star break, let's say it that way. It's definitely a better situation because 11 home runs in his last 4 starts over less than 20 innings, that's way more than he was able to allow in the first half of the season where he earned an All-Star bid.
Yeah, no, he has not pitched well since the All-Star break, and I don't think anybody that's been paying attention is going to be all that surprised by it. This was the bill was coming due. He's not going to go 22-4 over the course. It was like, that's just not who he is, but it happened, and that's okay, and he needs to get squared away. I think the larger point is the one that I find more interesting is that, look, Yamamoto, Skubal, Snell are going to pitch, in, assuming health. Yamamoto, Skubal, and Snell are locked into 3 of your 4 starting spots. It's who's that 4th guy that I think is particularly interesting. Is it Ohtani? If it is, okay, that's an easy one. Is it Tyler Glasnow? Okay, health, you never really know where it is. Lauer, Wrobleski, Sasaki. There are still a lot of guys that are potential for whether or not you get that 4th start in the playoffs. I don't know. Probably none of those last guys that we mentioned. But do you find yourself in the middle of the rotation or the middle of the bullpen? Are you picking up those 5th and 6th innings? Again, guys are much quicker to come out of games in the postseason. You're going to need guys that can give you a little bit more length. But I think like his spot on where does he pitch? Because look, Diaz and Scott and Vezia, those guys are going to be, there's 3 more bullpen spots that are gone. Like those numbers on that bullpen get really, really tight really quickly. So for Wrobleski, for Lauer, for Sasaki, like they're, quite frankly, even like Glasnow is not like those guys. He's a better pitcher than those other guys, but just the number crunch comes in is real, and there's just not enough spots to put guys. So Wrobleski going down for a little while is probably a little blessing in disguise for the rest of the guys here. And then Wrobleski can figure it out, come back, pitch well, and I'm sure he'll shoot right back into the middle of the mix because he's had such a nice season.
And Travis, just going from pitching sparingly previously with the Dodgers to now having nearly 130 innings mid-August, you as a former pitcher, how big of a change is that to your body where it's like that's part of the reason why he's going on the IL with the inflammation?
Yeah, I think, I don't know anybody like out there that's like run 10Ks or things like this. Like there's just sometimes all of a sudden you're just in uncharted territory. You've never done it before. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you haven't done it and you're not quite sure how your body's going to respond to it or how to treat, or if all of a sudden you do have a little bit of a hiccup. Like you mentioned, all of a sudden the home run ball is something that he's really struggling with. Is that because he's just not executing pitches? Is that because he has fatigue? Is that because he's pitched more innings than he has at any other point? Like it's really hard to kind of sort through all of that. But yeah, when you are in a part of your career where, you're just to use round numbers, you're usually throwing 100 innings in a season. And now all of a sudden you're in 120s, 130s. Doesn't mean that you're going to pitch poorly. It just means that kind of all bets are off. You never really know what's coming next.
And Travis, right here, I always come back to a phrase that you said about Eric Lauer a couple of months back. He's not Mr. Right. He's Mr. Right now. And I feel that us as Dodgers fans, we fall in love with our players that we draft, that our team gets, that are super young, that probably had all the odds against them. And when they start performing, we want them to succeed. And Justin Wrobleski, was he just Mr. Right now?
No, I think he's a little more of a long-term guy than a guy like Lauer. Lauer was, basically on the street available for whoever wanted. Dodgers, obviously did a great job, and he did a great job in resurrecting his career. But Wrobleski was an all-star. Wrobleski was a guy that did what you needed him to do, but he also was the guy that you needed to pitch in the first half of the season because those other guys were unavailable. It's like, run him out there. And Wrobleski, he didn't miss a turn. He went out there and really leaned heavily into what they needed him to do and did a great job. But yeah, look, this This is a marathon, right? Just because you're not playing now doesn't mean what you did earlier doesn't matter. And what he did earlier was incredibly important to put them where they are right now.
Roki Sasaki and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the only two Dodgers starters that haven't missed a turn in the rotation as we're talking right now on August 17th. So let's close the show asking our viewers, our listeners, if Tyler Glasnow comes back healthy, would you still want the Dodgers to put Justin Wrobleski back into the rotation, or would you rather see them take it slow and use another option? Let us know in the YouTube comments or reach out on social media. If he looks like Blake Snell has since coming back, Travis, it's Tyler Glasnow, and no doubt about it. Hopefully that's the case. It would be the best case scenario for the Dodgers. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary, the #1 sports podcast network. We'll be back on Tuesday as the Dodgers kick off the final series of their 13 games and 13-day stretch by sending Blake Snell out to the mound in Colorado against the Rockies team, who has the worst record in the National League. If you're watching on YouTube, stick around and check out the 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network channel. If you're listening on audio, make Locked On MLB your second listen of the day. Travis and I appreciate you riding with us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it Dodger Blue.